Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel for another careful look at the developments shaping our world. Today, we examine a major development in U.S. politics that continues to create ripples across the Capitol and far beyond. Picture a controversy powerful enough to push even the strongest personalities to question their future direction. New releases from the Epstein documents have stirred fresh reactions, including calls for people to step down, widespread anger, and growing opposition to figures who once appeared beyond reach. That said, before drawing firm conclusions about anyone listed in these records, we need to stress one key point right away. Just having your name in the Epstein files does not mean you are guilty of any crime or wrongdoing. Just having your name in the Epstein files does not mean you are guilty of any crime or wrongdoing. Seeing a name in the Jeffrey Epstein paperwork holds very little automatic significance for proving real criminal acts or ethical fault. These records, made public gradually in recent years via court decisions and Freedom of Information requests, include a vast mix of legal documents, travel records, contact directories, messages, sworn statements, accounts from witnesses, and various other pieces gathered during probes into Epstein's conduct. A mention could come from the most harmless or chance connection possible. For example, a person might get noted because they were at the same big public function Epstein attended, or because phone details got swapped informally at an event long ago with no continued contact. Some names show up simply because they were part of wide-ranging lists kept by Epstein or people around him for work connections, charity functions, or ordinary dealings that had nothing to do with his personal wrongs. These papers are not a record of confirmed offenses. They act more as an unedited collection of links, where some matter and plenty do not. Legal authorities and those conducting reviews have made this clear time and again in official documents and statements to the public. Those prosecuting cases, judges overseeing the releases, and lawyers for those harmed have all warned openly against assuming fault from a name alone. The logic is simple. Proving responsibility needs clear proof of particular actions, deliberate intent, awareness of illegality, and direct role, not just being nearby or referenced briefly in files. Labeling every mention as serious would wrongly tarnish people who played no part in Epstein's actions and would weaken valid claims against those who did. This approach upholds the basic idea that everyone stays innocent until solid evidence shows otherwise, even when the cases involve well-known or influential people. When news sources or analysts share lists of names without explaining this, they can spread false impressions that ruin lives permanently, sometimes causing threats, lost work, or isolation for individuals who did nothing wrong. Parts of the files stay hidden for good reason. Full exposure without limits would hurt blameless people much more than it would help reveal the truth. People supporting victims have pointed out that too much emphasis on famous names often pulls attention away from helping those who suffered and going after the main people responsible. In essence, these records offer starting points for investigation at most, not final decisions. Every reference calls for thoughtful review of the full situation, supporting facts, and how reliable statements are before reaching any firm view. Jumping to blame someone purely on a name goes against both legal rules and plain fairness. This careful stance holds true no matter the politics, position in society, or level of fame, without any exceptions. The large number of names involved, reaching hundreds and possibly more, shows just how often passing or unrelated contacts happen in the broad circles Epstein built over many years. A lot of these entries mean nothing beyond someone briefly sharing space in high-level settings where such overlaps were normal. Ignoring this detail turns a complicated situation into easy headlines, wearing down confidence in systems and feeding theories built on partial anger. A proper conversation starts by clearly stating that a name appearing is very different from confirmed participation. That foundation allows for thoughtful review instead of instant blame, leaving room for facts to come out through proof rather than guesses. A good number of names came up harmlessly because of unrelated messages sent by error. Many of the names catching notice in the Epstein records came from simple mistakes like forwarding emails incorrectly or small oversights in handling correspondence. In various recorded situations, people found out about their inclusion only because an unrelated note, maybe concerning a charity sale, a work idea, an event invite, or a small request, got accidentally added to a chain that later connected to Epstein's group. One straightforward case involved someone getting an urgent note from a contact highlighting the name in the public files. That person had never encountered Epstein, never gone to his locations, and had zero professional or personal links. Looking deeper, the mention linked back to a discussion about an entirely different occasion, a dinner for raising funds or something similar, where one person wrongly sent the whole exchange to someone with a loose tie to Epstein's network. That one action placed the name into the larger set of materials when they got pulled for legal reasons later. Mistakes like this happen often in massive file collections. Email setups from the 2000s on often carried lengthy chains with many copied in, and one slip like hitting reply all or attaching the wrong file could bring in people with no real connection. Official records document several examples where names appeared only due to these sending errors, without any sign of further involvement. Those examining the files have observed that Epstein and his team kept very large electronic address books, frequently filled with individuals who replied once to something or got added through shared contacts without ongoing ties. When legal demands required handing over full email accounts or systems, those chance additions came up next to actually important items. This pattern explains the real shock some well-known people felt when seeing their names. They truly remembered no significant link because none existed. Depositions include descriptions of how this happened. A coworker might send a work note to the incorrect list, or a helper might add an outside advisor to something meant only for the team. Once included, those accidental entries stayed in saved copies and archives, eventually becoming part of what reached the public. Experts in law who know this matter have noted that the same thing occurs in any big release of documents in court cases. Unrelated content gets included unless perfectly sorted first, which almost never happens completely. The outcome creates a false sense of broad ties when much of it is just electronic clutter. Understanding this separates what matters from background noise in discussions. It stops unfair attacks on those whose only issue was ending up in someone else's message chain. Real responsibility should focus on people with clear, verifiable connections to misconduct, not victims of careless sending. This fact highlights why context matters so much when reading these records. Without knowing exactly how a name got there, any view stays based on guesswork. The narration intentionally skips graphic details about the offenses to honor those who suffered. This script chooses carefully to avoid describing the specific acts or detailed stories of harm done by Epstein and those around him. The reason comes straight from respect for the victims and survivors who have shared their difficult experiences across many years. These people went through terrible abuse, control, and lasting pain, frequently as young individuals or those in vulnerable positions pulled into a system of influence and force. Going over those explicit events again here could cause fresh harm, make their pain feel like entertainment for viewers, or move the spotlight from real justice to mere excitement. Survivors have said many times in talks, legal filings, and support work that their accounts deserve to stand without repeated retelling just for impact. Accepting their words from the start, instead of always asking for more proof or shocking specifics, would have been the right approach years back. The script respects that by keeping the focus elsewhere, on failures in systems, safeguards that fell short, and the uneven results after these papers came out. If anyone wants the complete and troubling facts, they are available in open court materials, statements from those affected, or careful reporting already published. Bringing those details in again here would not help and might weaken the main points about holding people accountable and examining power structures. This careful limit keeps the discussion serious and thoughtful, putting the well-being of those hurt first instead of chasing views through outrage. It builds trust by steering clear of overly dramatic retellings that appear in some less careful reporting, making sure the story centers on larger effects rather than personal tragedies already covered properly in other places. The main point stays on the limited consequences at home and the shielding of influential people in America. The central theme here looks at how little real impact has happened inside the country, even with what the Epstein records have shown. Although certain names have appeared and caused unease, criticism, or a few isolated suggestions to leave positions, the general reaction across the United States remains surprisingly quiet given the seriousness of the claims and links involved. Prominent people, including elected officials, company heads, and government leaders, keep going forward mostly untouched, holding their roles, authority, and standing with hardly any real demand to leave or answer for it. This differs greatly from the strong measures taken to guard those at the top, whether through sharp private messages, quick changes in how things get said publicly, soft questioning, or careful editing that hides powerful men more than it protects victims. The trend points to a clear choice to guard top-level people over seeking complete openness or responsibility. Rare cases of pushback, such as a public figure cutting links with someone connected, stand out only because they happen so seldom. At the same time, people with recorded close relationships face brief disapproval that disappears fast without actual loss in politics or work. This small amount of fallout reveals bigger problems in how American systems protect those with power. where being near controversy almost never leads to real downfall if the person carries weight. The discussion highlights this difference to challenge what the country values and call for ongoing attention from the public as the best way to bring about real shifts. Stories describe Trump issuing strong warnings to supporters against digging deeper into the Epstein records. Various reports from political groups and news sources tell of Donald Trump showing clear irritation and speaking firmly in a private talk with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. The conversation reportedly focused on the continuing release and talk around the Epstein materials. Trump allegedly pointed out that a number of his own friends and key supporters had names show up in the files. He is said to have urged her not to press the issue too hard, explaining that more examination or public demands would cause needless trouble and problems for those people. The manner suggested strong concern and a wish to protect, presenting the files less as a call for general responsibility and more as a risk to his close circle. This exchange gained notice for showing a possible tension between demands for openness and loyalty to personal ties. Those watching saw it as an illustration of how influential people may try to limit damage from these disclosures. The described comments showed a guarded approach, putting the well-being of mentioned associates ahead of thorough review of what the records contain. When such behind-the-scenes cautions become known, they strengthen views that power gets used to block fuller probes or outcomes for people connected to Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell is said to have proposed tailoring her statements in return for leniency. After her private session before Congress, during which Ghislaine Maxwell often used her right against self-incrimination and refused to respond, her lawyers put out a statement expressing a limited readiness to help. It suggested Maxwell could supply names, information, and accounts that might suit or assist the sitting administration, particularly under Donald Trump. This readiness came directly linked to the chance of a presidential pardon or reduction in her punishment. Essentially, the announcement placed her in a position to offer details or versions that could guard or help Trump and those near him, but only if it led to her leaving prison. This step immediately sparked worries about how trustworthy any later statements might be, since it hinted at reasons to adjust or shape information rather than give plain facts. Her prior move to a less strict prison setting had already led to talk of special handling. The conditional help offer seemed to serve as a bargaining tool, trading promising words for freedom. It echoed wider patterns in the Epstein matter, where systems for responsibility appear softer when well-placed people or their connections come up. The proposal moved things from true revealing to a deal-making process, making it harder to get complete information through proper means. Leaders and figures abroad, in places like the UK, Norway, and UAE, encounter heavy calls to resign over Epstein connections. Outside the US, the Epstein records have caused much stronger and faster political results. In the United Kingdom, the governing party has taken major hits after the Prime Minister named people with clear links to Jeffrey Epstein. Those choices alone set off broad anger, close media examination, and ongoing public pushes for the leader to leave office. Opponents say that any link, even distant, shows bad decision-making and hurts confidence in those running things. The criticism has continued steadily, with rivals and even some from the same side calling for responsibility and removal. In Norway, the royal household faces intense disapproval because of uncovered money and social ties to Epstein, including claims of a large sum passed to certain family members. This news has sparked wide discussion, harmed the image of the crown, and brought demands for clear answers and separation from the controversy. The issue has put noticeable tension on the family and across society. In the United Arab Emirates, a notable business figure has dealt with serious consequences as his Epstein ties have drawn notice both locally and from outside. These cases demonstrate how institutions overseas, political groups, governments, or monarchies apply firmer pressure and actual requirements for stepping down or changes when Epstein-related mentions appear. The difference shows a faster readiness in other countries to see such links as unacceptable. Inside the United States, people with strong recorded connections to Jeffrey Epstein have mostly escaped serious work or political penalties. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick provides a strong illustration. Accounts portray him as among Epstein's nearest personal contacts, with signs of lasting and close ties over extended periods. Even so, he stays in his important government post with virtually no real effort to make him leave. Though a few lawmakers like Representative Adam Schiff have openly suggested resignation, that call has not built into actual demands from lawmakers, the executive branch, or leading news sources. No serious reviews have started, no sessions planned, and no steps within parties have acted against him. He carries on with his role, handling public tasks without clear interruption. This limited outcome differs sharply from the quick calls for responsibility seen internationally. It suggests a wider hesitation at home to apply penalties to those with influence when Epstein links come up. Without lasting consequences, such people hold on to power and position, prompting doubts about how well limits on authority work when connected groups are concerned. The lack of follow-through strengthens ideas that being close to controversy holds almost no danger for top figures in the American setup. The high number of times Trump's name appears, tens of thousands, indicates far more than occasional contact. Donald Trump's name comes up many times throughout the Epstein records, with tallies going into the tens of thousands based on reviews of what has been made public. This amount goes well beyond what happens from rare or surface-level meetings. References show in travel records, conversation threads, contact lists, sworn accounts, and different messages covering several years. That level of repetition suggests regular familiarity and ongoing involvement in Epstein's world, more than single events or standard introductions in high society. The repeated mentions point to lasting nearness, through joint occasions, shared contacts, or direct communication, that becomes noticeable next to names that appear just a few times. This trend brings up fair questions about how close and what kind of relationship existed, without immediately confirming any fault. It stands out against cases where a lone mention links to a one-time happening or mistake. The large number of references calls for deeper looks at the details around each, including timing, others present, and reasons, instead of brushing it off as normal overlap. Frequent appearances in records this sensitive naturally draw attention to whether everything stayed proper or entered questionable areas. The count explains why focus stays on Trump in particular, since the amount itself points to something more meaningful than brief acquaintance. The suggested step is steady outreach from citizens to lawmakers to block any shielding of Trump before votes. The strongest way to address the Epstein records lies in regular people keeping up consistent, coordinated contact with those they elected. Reach out to your representative in the House and both senators using phone calls, messages, or written notes. State plainly that any attempt to protect Donald Trump from review over these materials will come with serious political risks. Be direct that guarding him, or seeming too tied to him, will hurt their chances of staying in office, especially with elections coming in November and continuing afterward. Keep this effort steady instead of dropping off after early coverage ends. By bringing it up repeatedly, voters show that the records remain a current issue connected to honesty and responsibility in leadership. Certain members like Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have started voicing support for openness and results. Continued demands from the public can push more leaders to join in and apply equal rules to everyone with influence. This direct method gets around slow official responses and speaks straight to those who need voter backing. It changes quiet knowledge into clear calls against special favors or hiding facts. The plan depends on steady numbers and follow-through to change how politicians balance personal loyalty with the danger of losing votes. To close things out, let's connect the main points covered today. From the harmless reasons names appear in these records, like simple email errors or passing references, to the careful decision to avoid graphic crime details out of consideration for survivors, it's clear that full context changes everything. The small amount of real consequences here in the U.S. contrasts strongly with the fast and firm calls for responsibility seen in other countries, where political and royal figures face quick pressure to leave. Accounts of Trump firmly cautioning supporters, Maxwell's limited offer to provide helpful statements for leniency, and the enormous number of his own mentions in the files together suggest close ties and efforts to manage fallout that need close attention. People like Howard Lutnick move forward with hardly any penalty, showing a setup that guards those at the top while those who suffered often go without full justice. Still, the issue goes beyond just revealing facts. It requires steps forward. Steady pressure from everyday people on Congress and senators can stop any extra protection for Trump, particularly with elections near. Making any attempts to hide things a real danger at the ballot box, that's the perspective we share here today. Keep learning, keep involved. If this breakdown connected with you, please subscribe to stay updated. It helps continue these important talks. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe additional consequences will come from the Epstein files? Let's talk about it. Until next time.